Hello and welcome back to TriggerSmart. Now this one is going to be maybe a trigger for some people. So if you cannot handle talking about human exploitation, then this would be your time to leave. This is going to talk about some of the alleged ties to Ericka Kirk, some strangeness around TPUSA, and then basically proven child exploitation and human exploitation in Ukraine since the war started. Now, of course, I have to preface this by saying that these are just allegations. This is just content that's out on social media. There's no proof in some of the cases of some of the things that are going on. So always do research for yourself, and let's get into it. So we start off with this video here. This is a gentleman that was on Redacted, and he has a claim that is very interesting.
Now you have evidence that these people had character questions long before the assassination, and we should not forget that and allow them to just have this protection of discipleship. Can you tell us what you found about the allegations about Boyer long before the shooting?
Sure. So basically, there is on my website, there's a lot of other documented cases of allegations of sexual assault going back years, and it always kind of gets covered up. This is one from 2024. You can see the date is December 2024. So this is an alleged sexual assault. I'm going to just summarize a little bit what's in this police report. But this is a very young girl, very young. Yeah, as typically happens with Turning Point, they recruit all these really young, very attractive girls usually. And then Martinez is actually a current board member on the Arizona Young Republicans. So he's involved in the Republican scene. And you may have remembered the scandal that Young Republicans had, that there's Turning Point connections there as well. But let's skip that for a second. So the victim alleges that she was a junior employee working with Martinez, who was a senior employee, and Tyler Boyer, and Martinez acted as her, quote, project leader. But from the police report, Martinez is with this victim, and they're in a car together alone, and she has a dress on, and he places his hand on the inside of...
Okay, now we won't let it go all the way to the details for obvious reasons, but there have been... So first of all, every company, especially the larger you get, the more contractors and things you bring in, you're going to have harassment. It's just going to happen. People are going to date and they break up. People are going to harass other people. There may be some inappropriate interactions and things like that. That is going to happen. That's why you have HR. Part of the issue is they're alleging that Tyler Boyer was essentially functioning as HR. So instead of this case and apparently some others going directly to HR so they can handle it the correct legal way, they're being cycled through higher ups, and that can create problems. You may run into situations where something happens and just kind of brushed to the side by the higher ups, whereas HR may have actually done the correct legal thing and pressed charges or whatever they need to do legally. So very interesting. So for YouTube reasons, I'm not going to use certain terminology that's in here, but here's 10 facts about human exploitation, I'll call it. At any given moment, an estimated 50 million people are being victimized in situations of trafficking and exploitation, including forced marriage worldwide. 25% of these are children. Human exploitation is any situation of exploitation that a person cannot refuse or leave because of threats, violence, coercion, deception, or abuse of power. Now, that's really important to understand because it doesn't necessarily mean that they're an unwilling participant, because they might be coerced into thinking they want to do it, or they may be offered money or threats to their family, for example. So this is not as straightforward as you would think. Now, it says here you often hear about trafficking hotspots. One hotspot that I've been hearing about is supposedly Ukraine. This is a France 24 news report, and this was 3 years ago. This is basically the start of the war, 2022, and they're talking about this very thing.
Well, another security issue the police are facing here is human trafficking. Posted around the border crossing are leaflets like this, which warn refugees about the traffickers working in their area. Well, it advises refugees not to give away their passports, to be wary of immediate job offers, and only to take official transportation. The refugees crossing over are mainly women and children, and this group is unfortunately vulnerable to targeting by criminals.
You heard what she said there. It's interesting. She said, be wary of like job offers. So these people that are getting, especially the adults that are ending up in this situation, it might initially be offered to them as like, hey, I have this job opportunity. You can make money. Come with us. Trust us. Here's some money up front. Do you need some food and clothes right now? I'll give you that. And then once they get into that situation, then they're stuck. Now with children, that's a whole different situation because they don't really have the mental capacity to judge that kind of stuff in a lot of cases. And they're also very vulnerable. And just a quick side note, this happens everywhere around the world. It happens in all 50 US states as well. So if you think this is like a third world issue, or that like the Ukraine orphan situation that people are alleging is unique, it's not. But let's dig some more into that. We have this Trillion OX or Trillion 0X account, and he's saying heart-shattering testimony by a Romanian woman who knows exactly what Romanian angels, he says angles, ministry allegedly did, trafficking 86,000 children from poor families. Don't let censors gaslight you with fact checks. This is the truth about Ericka Kirk. Now, again, this is just his allegation. And if you come down here, you can see almost 1 million views, 5,000 reposts. But let's go ahead and check this out.
Yeah, can you tell us? Thank you.
Yes, I can tell you. First of all, I want to say that Erika was also a victim because she was pushed in pageant without very, very young, and she just win right away. And then she worked for Trump, and Trump introduced after the Jerusalem in.
So now listen to what she said. She's saying that Erika is the victim or a victim. And if you think about it, if you're 16, 17 years old, you're going into these super high pressure, high level pageants, and then you're with Trump, which I'm not alleging anything about Trump. But the fact that, she's in these pageants and behind Trump, that they really push people hard and kind of skip the growth stuff and move right to, big business and big money and that kind of thing. And I think it's very interesting too, that her net worth at 21, I believe, was like 115 million or something like that. But let's continue forward.
Introduced to Kirk to work for Kirk. She just was a honeypot for Charlie Kirk. And then Trump pushed her to work for Charlie Kirk.
Now, this is just this woman's allegations, but if this is all real, which it seems like this interview and all this stuff might be, she's alleging that Ericka Kirk was just a honeypot for Charlie. So that would mean that Charlie was exploiting Ericka Kirk as well. Very interesting.
In 2012, Erika was 23 years old, and she is already 500 million on her value.
So she's saying at 23 years old, she was 500 million was her net worth. Now you have to remember too that her parents were also defense contractors. At least that's what I've seen reported. So, they could have already had a ton of money already. So she could have already been well off before she even started all these other organizations and businesses.
And she has several fashion company and other companies. And then she went in Romania with the military. I have the documentation. I'm trying to send it to you. And she works with the government, military government, to.
Okay, so she's talking about Erika working with the government. And I remember I've heard several reports that Ericka Kirk was maybe like a CIA or FBI or U.S. government asset in different ways, or that she was working with them in some capacity. Very interesting.
To the several very poor city in Romania, where they try to adopt and they did kidnap very young children, because they are a lot of family, like they have 7, 8, 9 kids. They were not able to feed the kids, so they offer them some money, and the parents think that, okay, that kid is going to be adopted in another country and it's going to have a great future. So they just lie to them, and the kids, they were taken away from them without proper documentation proper paperwork because they work with different prosecutor. And
She is alleging that in this situation that these families in these third world areas or in these war-torn areas, that they have many children and they can't afford them, which, anyone that has 4 or 5 or 6 kids can understand. They're expensive. So what's happening is she's alleging that these people are going in and they are basically illegally, with improper documentation, promising to take care of the children, and then the children are leaving with them, and who knows what's happening after that. That's kind of her allegation.
the child support, whatever agency they have at that time, and they were paid. So they steal like 86,000 kids from Romania, and they send it to UK, Israel, and I don't know if other countries all over the world. They were and nobody knows what those kids they end up.
She's saying that 86,000 kids so far have been unaccounted for and they don't know where they ended up at. Now, again, this is just allegations, but I found this all very interesting. Now, this is just kind of a side note because I was doing my research, but there is a adult video called Romanian Angels. I'm sure it's unrelated, but I thought that was very interesting. Now, what really triggered me to start digging into some of this stuff in this video specifically was Canadian prepper, who I've been watching for years. He had a video with this guest here. I'm going to show you parts of it, but he basically works in war-torn areas, and his whole purpose is to protect people like this that are getting exploited. And he shares some gems.
In crisis zones and disasters, these criminals that you're talking about, they're drawn to that. They recognize the opportunity because they're opportunists. So they recognize, okay, there's people that I can exploit, there's resources I can exploit. I'll give you a case in point. When we were in Ukraine, our mission at the behest of the government, this wasn't us just freelancing, was to rescue orphans that were on the front line, get to them first before the criminal element, the criminal gangs could get them and take them away.
Right. Okay, so he's saying that in Ukraine, part of his job was to go and get the children that were orphaned or just separated from their parents, get them before the criminal element does, right? So one thing that he'll bring up here in a second is it's very common anywhere in the world where there is war, even just a natural disaster, any type of tragedy, these opportunistic criminals and human exploitationists, we'll call them, they come in and they start doing this kind of behavior. And they do it because in a lot of cases, they can make a lot of money. So again, it's, capitalism.
Take them across the border into Belarus, Romania, wherever they were going. And there were times where we showed up at the same time. And they were working.
So really quick there, if you heard what he said that these criminal traffickers and these gangs would take the children into Romania. So I just thought that was interesting as well because the Ukraine war, Romania, Romanian Angels, and people are alleging that there was some funny business going on with these children.
Out in the open, Russians weren't shooting at them. Ukrainians didn't really know who they were, so they weren't shooting at them. And it was a race against time to get to these orphanages and get the kids first and get them to safety, get them to where the government wanted them, where they could actually watch over them, get them away from these front lines.
People who are trying to traffic them.
People who were trying to traffic them. I mean, 1 month into the war, they admitted there were 20,000 children missing.
So he said in just 1 month, there were 20,000 children missing. And I assume that the government was telling him that there was 20,000 children missing. In 1 month, this war's been going on for years. This is insane.
And that estimate's gone up, I don't know what it's at now, 10x of children. They just don't know where they are. That's in a war zone. It's exactly the same in disaster zones. They show up, they recognize, and the reason why I mentioned the exploitation is because that's the fastest growing criminal trade on the planet.
So there you go. He says that one of the fastest growing criminal trades, that one of the fastest ways to make money is to exploit human beings. And now remember too, in the previous administration, when the borders were open, there was a lot of allegations of this happening too. There were children that would come in through the border from all the, South American countries, and I know other countries drop people off and down there too. But what was happening is the cartels, they would charge people, and then the cartels would get them across the border, and then those people would be indebted to the cartels. That's another form of human exploitation. So this is just a very widespread thing, and I think it's always happened since the beginning of humanity. It's just now it's more talked about. There's more video. There's more traces of it. But this is something that is a huge issue everywhere.
Even here in Canada and in the United States, when they're being exploited, which our two countries, by the way, are two of the biggest consumers of child exploitation. And I specifically targeted Canadians when I was working down in the Caribbean. I won't tell you what island.
So he just said that the U.S. and Canada are the biggest consumers. So that means that, yes, there is human exploitation happening within all 50 United States. But in these third world countries where stuff's happening, like in Ukraine and Romania, with these allegations happening over there, they could be getting them there. But people here in the U.S. and in Canada are the ones who are consuming them. In some cases, possibly literally, right? But I find that very interesting. So basically, the third world is the market, and the U.S. and Canada is where they're making their purchases. Very disturbing. Ericka's nonprofit was called Everyday Heroes Like You, Inc., and it's registered in Scottsdale, Arizona, 501(c) public charity, and it has the address and everything. I found it interesting. If you click on their URL, it takes you to Ericka's proclaim365.com, where she has her shop and her Bible and 365 and all that stuff there. I found that very interesting. So I went on to ChatGPT, and I know you guys love ChatGPT. But I went on there and I asked it, I said, basically, was there any involvement of Ericka Kirk in any of this stuff with Ukraine, period, like any of it. And it says, as far as money, influence, citizenship, official cooperation, etc., nothing credible shows up in the public record. All the Ukraine-related stuff around here looks like disinformation aimed at weaponizing Charlie's assassination, not genuine connections. So I thought this was very interesting as well. Obviously, you have criminals that are doing this type of exploitation. But look at this. Family members are involved in nearly half of child exploitation cases. That's insane. So recruitment into trafficking, roughly 41% is from family. That's terrible. Intimate partner, 14%, 11% friends, and 34% other. So that means of all the humans, adults and children that are exploited, only 34% is coming from maybe these gangs and like the big global trades and stuff like that. 41% is from family. And then they end up in begging, domestic work, hospitality, kind of, forced to work these resorts and things like that. And then, of course, illicit activities. You say is only 6%. So typically when you think of human exploitation, your first thought is illicit activities. But according to this, it's a very small percentage. They're being exploited in other ways, basically slaves. And it says main methods of control, psychological. That would be threatening them, telling them they're not good enough and they have no other purpose in life and things like that, right? And then physical, forcing them into it physically. And then, of course, you have this one, 10%, and then basically being drugged, which, there's some movies that have talked about stuff like that. There's one with Denzel Washington where he was drugged and he did a videotape. And they showed it to his wife. Now, saying gender-wise, about 66% are female, which makes sense. I think it's probably maybe a little bit higher than that, but there are some males that are definitely part of this. And it says the majority of children that are exploited for this reason, 67% are between 15 and 17 years old. And I thought it would only be fair to fact-check the claims that Ericka Kirk's charity was ever tied to trafficking. As conservative activist Ericka Kirk publicly mourned her husband, Charlie, social media users targeted her work on Romanian charity project. So let's look down here and see what they say. Did y'all know Ericka Kirk is banned from Romania because her evangelical group is accused of trafficking children out of Romanian villages? One person said on X. Lots of posts like that. Kirk, whose maiden name is Francie, founded the nonprofit organization Everyday Heroes Like You, which aimed to assist other charities. So it's a charity that helped other charities. That work included an international Romanian Angels project that teamed up with the U.S. Marine Corps to sponsor a Romanian orphanage, Kirk once told Arizona Foothills magazine. So if that is the case, then that means if this was true at all, which, this is going over the facts here. If it wasn't in fact true that the U.S. Marine Corps was teaming up with her and she was doing that, then that means that the United States would also be implicated there, right? So what's the evidence for these claims? They're saying there isn't any. Some posts repeat baseless narrative without giving any hint about where it originated or providing sources. One of the earliest posts they found said Kirk's organization was linked to missing Romanian children and trafficked, and included screenshots of 2 articles. The first was an Israeli newspaper, Haaretz, was about a Romanian investigation into Israeli adoption agencies and an international conspiracy to sell children's organs for transplants. Now, we do know, not necessarily this particular case I'm looking at right now, but there are many cases where these humans that are trafficked, especially children, do get harvested for organs. That's been seen in many countries. It's not just Ukraine. This is kind of universal. And again, it's for money, and it's for, in a lot of cases, it's for elites and people to get organs that they want to use in their bodies to live longer. And we kind of heard something from, I think it was it was the meeting with like Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un and also Putin. He was kind of like a hot mic moment where he basically said, like, with, transplanting of organs and stuff, we can basically live forever, right? So it says the report did not mention Kirk. Romanian angels are everyday heroes. Kirk was only 13 years old when that report was published. So clearly it couldn't have been about her. The second was a 2023 article. Media organization founded that reports internationally, including Romania. It details the stories of Romanian children, now adults, who were adopted internationally and who sought information on the Romanian births, including some people who were concluded that they were trafficked as children. The report also did not mention Kirk. Romanian angels are everyday heroes like you. So we have a lot of sources that are making allegations and they're saying these things, but they don't really have proof. I just thought it was interesting in that Canadian prepper video where the guy basically specifically says Ukraine and specifically says Romania. That's what really made that connection for me, and it just kind of piqued my curiosity. The flyer says people can change the life of Romanian orphans this holiday season by adopting a child. Now, again, according to that other woman, she alleges that they were taking children without proper documentation, and then they were selling them off or shipping them away to other countries, and no one knows where they ended up. An archived version of Everyday Heroes Like You website says the project involved a partnership with U.S. service members and United Hands Romania. They contacted the U.S. Marine Corps and U.S. Army to ask about the partnerships, and they did not hear back. Oana Prasakariu, I probably butchered that. United Hands Romania's vice president told us the organization had collaborated with Kirk, then Eric Francie, who personally sponsored gifts for children at Antonio Placement Center. Now, that's what I heard it was basically the shipment of gifts to children. It wasn't a like adoption type of ring or something similar. We never heard or received any bad reports about her personally. Romanian media reported Ericka Kirk's Everyday Heroes Like You made donations in the form of gifts to Antonio Placement Center in Constanta, as well as the local hospital between 2011 and 2015. There's no evidence that the ministries were involved in actual international adoptions. A local newspaper article documented the gift donations to the orphans. So a lot of people are saying that these international adoptions are happening. The media in Romania, assuming they weren't part of this, if it was an operation, are saying that there's no evidence that there were any actual adoptions. Okay. They also searched for the Nexus News database for reports about Kirk being banned from Romania, and they have found none. We rate the claim that Ericka Kirk is banned from Romania because of her evangelical group was accused of trafficking children out of Romanian villages false. Okay, so what's the takeaway from all of this? Well, based on the sources that I can find, there's no evidence. There's tons of stories. There's stuff that could be manufactured. Could this still be true? Sure. But based on evidence that I can find and that I can see anywhere, it's just allegations at this point. And a lot of this stuff can be faked. For example, the woman who was in the report saying that, she had proof that these kids were taken basically illegally without proper documentation. It's just a voice. There's no woman who's behind it that you can see or research or interact with. There's no documentation or texts or anything like that. She said that she had some sources in that video. I don't know if she ever sent them to him, but I just find a lot of this stuff very interesting. Now, could this have happened? Sure. But I can't find proof that it has happened. And it's just like the Charlie Kirk assassination situation right now. There's tons of people that have a lot of different ideas of what could have happened, and there's a lot of trails, but there's no actual official reports of what actually happened besides the FBI narrative. So I found this very interesting. I'd love to hear your opinion. Do you think that this happened? Because we know that this type of behavior 100% happens. It happens in the US and it happens in every country around the world. It kind of always has. Now, it's terrible, but it's the truth. And this could be just another fraction of that if it is happening. But based on the evidence, do you think that Ericka Kirk or her organization had any involvement in any of this? Leave it down in the comments. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this around. And I'll see you on the next one.